buddy John. We're going to be talking about some fun stuff like we put in the description. And if you guys can hear me, just put it in the chat, please. Obviously, I want to make sure everyone can hear and see us and all that stuff. But yeah, like we always say, like if you guys have any questions during the podcast, just throw it in the chat. I will get to you as soon as I can. And we'll leave the last 10, 15 minutes to Q&A. So let's get started. So how you been, John? And what's new? How's everything? And what else is popping?
I'm good. Tired, but chugging along. A lot of side projects, a lot of stuff going on. But yeah, so, I don't know. Things have been good. How about on your end?
Good. So for those folks that don't know who you are, who are you? What do you do? And give a little intro.
Sure. I'll keep it brief. So I would say hacking since I was a little kid. I have a few stories where I pick how I got started, really. But if you watch the last times I've been on here, you'll probably hear a different one. So I'm not going to give you another one this time. You'll have to wait. But so I've been hacking since I was a little kid, maybe around like 10, 11. And then around 20, I got my first job as a security consultant, actually closer to 22. And then for 10 years, I've been a security consultant, moving up and doing almost every type of offensive security engagements for Fortune, 10 to government entities to basically every industry. I like to say the only service lines I have not performed in at least a handful of engagements on is Azure, GCP, and blockchain. But other than that, I've done more than a handful. And then outside of that, I have my own brand going, GainSec, and really it's just meant to be an outlet for the stuff that I don't get to cover as much during work, or when I don't get to choose my engagements. Focusing a lot of open source tools, security research, contributing, speaking, volunteering, whatever, school.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So, obviously we talked offline about some talks that you submitted. Some got, not accepted or whatever. But what are those talks about? Like, is anything like you want to share that, what the talk would have been about if you got accepted?
Yeah. So I submitted to DEF CON and we can guess on why it wasn't accepted or what, but really it covers two main topics. The topic is surveillance technology and why you should care, and vulnerabilities I found in it, and what I'm calling phase one, which is low-hanging fruit or physical access, right? Compared to, let's say, a completely wireless exploit. Mm-hmm. And I focused on a few different types of devices that you'll see, like roadside units, which are not super prevalent in the US at the moment, but semi trucks will have DSRC and all these interesting 802.11 protocols. And if you know what EasyPass is, or toll booths or stuff like that, right? That usually uses the same technology. So I focused on some vulnerabilities I found, by purchasing some of those units, and then also, the rise of license plate readers and gunshot detection systems and cameras in general, and just how they've blown up. And I don't know, I just drove around one day and realized whoa, what is all this stuff, and so then I started to look it up, and kind of delved into there. And so it was just, here's 5 different devices. Here's the vulnerabilities I found. Here's how I found them. Here's how I confirmed them. And the idea was really a few layers, right? If you were technical, I really was a call to arms. We need to research into this together. We need to look into this, because a lot of this stuff is black boxes, right? There's nothing about it online. Mm-hmm. If you were new, it would be a good enough introduction for you to get started, because and then if you were just completely not technical, it was more of hey, you should be aware of this and care,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's definitely that definitely sounds interesting. It's a bummer that it wasn't accepted. And thank you for the audio still breaking from here. I wonder if that is it me? Is it both of us, or is it just John,
me?
or just me? I don't know. It just says the audio is still breaking. I hear you pretty well. Not
pretty
sure.
Well or not good?
No, I can hear you good.
Okay, because I could switch to the mic in my ear, the AirPods if you want, but
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you well. Awesome. That's pretty cool. So how can someone uh same I'm here, I made it. Hey, uh same is it the same both of us are choppy? Yeah, I think I'm just gonna stay with my old. I'm not gonna use Restream. I mean Riverside. After this one, I'm done with Riverside. This this thing is a shit show. I tried to test it the other day and it was giving me a lot of problems, and that's why I wanted to test it out. So thanks, John, for being a guinea pig tonight. But yeah. So like for those people that want to get into hardware hacking or hardware reverse engineering or whatever the case may be, like if they're trying to start out, maybe they do traditional pen testing today, like network infrastructure, web apps, and all that stuff. So how can they get into the world of hardware hacking? Like what is something that they can do maybe on a low budget? How can they get cooking?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, um, I'm out of the service lines that I do like the hardware is IoT, right? Like that stuff's probably the least amount that I knew about, at least before I started this journey. And so that was kind of my mindset, was like, how can I do this that's fun, something like hacking something that I want to, and not just be like another IP camera from China, right? Because that's like all you see, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or router, right? And so I wanted to pick something different, and that's how I just like went down this rabbit hole. In reality, you just need a device, let's say anything from eBay, anything with a chip. And more times than not, like a bus pirate, which was $50, now it's like $120. But even just like a USB to TTL, like to UART serial connection, so it's USB to your computer, and then you just touch it to the pins or the pads, on the device. That's like the majority of what you need to really get started. And if you do watch those videos of people who do like a lot of router stuff, like that's really what they use. But then your knowledge of like OSs and of networking, of I don't know, mobile stuff, right? Which I could touch on, like all that stuff ends up being applicable, and that's really what attracted me to it. Not only was it like a final frontier, and not that I like am an expert in it at all right now, but it also is one of those things like software testing, right? Where like it combines a bunch of different knowledge bases, right? So it quickly goes from, well, I have physical access to, okay, now like, I need to find a way to escalate privileges, right? And then so on and so forth. So really just pick a device and open it up and kind of go from there. I have some CVs that I published on an OBT2 tablet, right, for your car, that I bought off like Facebook Marketplace. Like just popped it open. I haven't touched car hacking yet, but still, you just open it up. I'm like, oh well, here's SD card, and here's the EMC, and here's this weird port, and here's these pads. So a multimeter, bus pirate, and a device you want to hack is really a fine way to start.
Cool. That's pretty cool. And so I'm just looking at the chat. You sound like you're an AM radio station, a lot of popping. Yeah. Like I said, tonight will be the last time I use this software, going back to my other one. But yeah, so I want to touch on something because you're a prime example of like certification. Because I get the question about certifications a lot. We may have touched on this last time. I don't remember. I don't recall. But obviously, it's 2025. Things have changed. Jobs are probably getting harder to find. Competition. Everyone wants to hack, and everyone it's pretty saturated today. So
Right.
you're someone that doesn't have OSCP, CPT, all these fun acronyms behind your name, and you're still pretty successful in this field. Do you feel like with your skill set, if you were coming into the game today, you would have had a harder time? Or like, do you feel like if you had to do it all over in 2025, would you still go the route that you went? Or would you go get certified and compete with all these other people that have, all these alphabet soup behind their name?
So I mean, I do have a degree, right? So I mean, that
Yeah.
kind of has weight to it. I will tell you, the first firm I worked at, I was a third employee, and like he actively like didn't care or didn't really want you to even have like degrees. I mean, like, and that's really how the industry started, right? Off the punks and the dropouts. So I feel a luck was a part of it. I found my first job on Craigslist, Hackers Wanted, believe it or not, and it turned out to be legit. But I was also at a place where I could take like a less salary and like get in the door. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if that's a possibility, like just do it, just get in. I went into that job with the understanding that this is a short-term thing that I'm going to leave, right? This is just my foot into the industry. So I don't think that I would do certs. I never would have. I started hacking before like Hack This Site even was the thing, right? So like the stuff I did do was like, in gray area, right? Where sure, I would like exploit SQL injection, but like, I wouldn't do anything with it past that, right? And I never liked like the certifications or the CTFs or the boot to roots, I never liked that. And I guess that's just kind of because I come from prior to that and like, I don't know, didn't need it. I think that it's fine. It really just depends the type of person. And actually, I did a lecture on this at DEF CON Paris, but it wasn't recorded, where I interviewed like 5 people above me at all these different companies. And I just said, like, if this person has CVEs, does that have more weight than a cert? Or, would you treat them differently? Or, yada, yada, yada. And the reality is they don't really care what's on your CV. Like that's enough to get you past HR. But then they're going to ask you the same questions. They're going to treat you the same. They're not going to assume you know something just because, you have some cert or whatever. So if you are the type of person that if you pay, you'll commit to learning, then that's where there's value in it, right? Me, I just do it, because I love it. So no, I don't think it would have made a difference. If I was trying to go join a big firm or try to go work at a bank immediately, yeah, you need a 4-year degree. You know what I mean? But the industry is smaller than you think, but there's also a lot of small players. So if you go to work in a boutique firm, which there's plenty of them, although they're hard to just find because like who knows, that they exist even, they'll base it off your merit and like what if that makes sense.
No, 1,000%. That makes total sense. And I like to ask, because if you ask someone like, for example, John Hammond, right? Like I had him and he loves CTFs. He hosts CTFs. That's his thing, right? His fun, his jam is CTFs. And you have someone like yourself is not into CTFs. And I have like another friend that's really not into CTFs at all. And I was never really, like, I would do them just for my YouTube content and just do it until I got into it. And like the Stinger, the one that's in the chat, he's, on the team with my Hack the Box team. I think there's some other people in here that are from the team. And it's like, he came over and said, hey, do you want to start a CTF team on Hack the Box? And I'm like, man, like I do Hack the Box like on some retired machine, just like to do some content, right? Just to showcase a technique or whatever. Not really, it sounds bad, I want to admit it, like not to really learn or like the rabbit hole of getting out of a CTF,
well,
right?
You wouldn't use a tutorial if you were going to learn, right? I mean,
exactly.
Yeah. And like, I worked, I was hired by one of the colleges that I went to while I was there. And like part of my job was to help them apply for a grant. And that was on like gamifying cybersecurity, where I built using like a CTF like reporting framework. Oh God, I forgot what it's called now, but I like built like a prototype for them, right? And like that bridge between like video gaming and gamifying like it and hacking, like there is a lot of relation, like there is to skating as well, right? To hacking, it's like that bridge makes sense. But for me, like, yeah, that's great. But like once I don't know, started to actually hack stuff, like it alone is enough for me that I don't need to like, get points, if that makes sense. Even though I do have a bunch of CVEs, I don't really consider them much. You know what I mean? Like they're not. It's not like hasn't gotten me anything. You know what I mean? So again, if you're the type of person that needs to feel like you're always moving and like leveling up in your RPG, like I mean, if you watch like the Lazy Peon from YouTube, the gamer, like he has his whole life like that. You know what I mean? He posts like I leveled up in fitness because I started Muay Thai. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's a whole mindset. If that's what you need, that's what you need. Some people need to be paid to learn. That's fine. For me, I love it. So I'll spend the time.
Yeah, no, that's valid points. And I love to hear this because everyone has their own journey, right? Like I was the same way, right? If it's skating, now I'm almost 40. So I still have my board. And I think the last time I really skated when we played skate virtually in my old garage, and I almost fucking killed myself on a tray flip. But like, like with bowling or everything that I, outside of the world of cyber, like working out, arm wrestling, Like, okay, I know if I want to compete or do something like this, I know I have to work on certain techniques that I'm really shit or where I'm weak. And, you know, like, I just think it's super, super important for those folks to hear that everyone has their own path and not, you know, because people come to me, it's like, hey, dude, like, I want to be like you. I'm like, dude, don't be like me. You know what I mean? I'm nobody. I'm just a guy on the internet that talks shit to folks on this channel and just like makes videos, right? Like, I'm just another human being. I'm not better than you. You're not better than me. Like, let's just chill. Like, you can be you, boo boo. You know what I mean? I can try to give some pointers into what I've done, but maybe that, you know, what I've done in my career, what you've done in your career is two different paths, right? You know, I don't know. I don't even know. Have you ever worked as like a network engineer, a system engineer?
I went straight from, you know, from hacking my neighbor's Wi-Fi's to hacking government entities and fortune companies. So no,
Yeah.
I jumped straight into the game. And I can tell you that I learned more in the first 3 months than I did in like the 7 years that I was, you know, hacking for fun, you know, as a kid and teenager and stuff. But that's okay, because again, you learn where it applies, right? I mean, you quickly learn that like even the approach is, it's hard to understand that, okay, CTF, a boot root, like, you know that there's something there for you to find. Like, when you're given, I don't know, client software, like, sure, some of them don't, most of them, you know, don't care. It's more of a regulation, a checkbox thing, but like, there also isn't a guarantee for you to find anything, and that's a huge pressure to it, you know. But I also come from the hacker mindset and culture, right, to a pen tester. More and more, especially people who go the cert route, the CTF route, like, that is a much more of a polished, in a suit pen test culture, right? Like, that's, you're right. And so, you know, maybe that's also why I'm kind of anti-cert as well, if that makes sense.
1000%. Yeah, man. That's totally true. Like, that's a valid point. Yeah, because like I said, like, I know I was never into, you know, a lot of folks know I never really played, you know, video games throughout my life. Like, now that I have a daughter, yeah, she has a Nintendo Switch, and sometimes, you know, she'll play Crash Bandicoot, and she gets stuck, and I'm like, all right, you know, I can press the button faster than her, you know, like, so I can help her get, you know, past the board. But like, I'm not sitting there just like chilling on a video game, so I never really been into that. So like, having that, like, going into the CTF, since like my mind is not quote unquote gamified, you know, and it's like, oh shit, like, sometimes when I go down these rabbit holes and like, you know, but like you said, you made a really, really valid point. I think that's super critical for folks to know, because I've been on engagements that, you know, they were their environment was super hardened, right? Like, and I understand the defensive aspect, because that's what I do, right? I know how the security measures are in place. I know what to look for, because, you know, I understand both sides, because yeah, like, during the day I'm defending, at the night, if I'm on like a side project, whatever, I'm doing offensive security. So, you know, that having that mindset is definitely important. And yeah, you're totally right. Like, I can't doubt that. I can't fault that for nothing. I'm trying to, like, because there's no chat. Is there a chat on yours where it says like the live stream chat? There's nothing on my end. There's not anything on your end.
I have the YouTube open, so I see a little bit more.
Yeah, I have YouTube open on one
But
here.
no, the last thing I see is "Hey guys" in the live stream chat. So that stopped working.
Yeah, this is a shit software. All right. Yeah, so cool. And I had something in my head. Now I totally forgot. So oh my god. Oh shit! I just totally drew a blank. So yeah, so I guess, like, for those people now, like, trying to, and you touched on, like, you went from zero to hacking, right? You never went to help desk, sysadmin, network admin. Was there like a reason why that you didn't do like the traditional IT stuff prior, or and what is your advice to someone that wants to get into the game? Would you recommend them that, or just like do the John route?
Yeah. So I would say, and I kind of, it's kind of a core memory now in my head, which is funny. Like, I remember being about 18, and that was during the rise of, like, or the peak of anonymous, maybe. And like, I was already not, I wasn't a part of Anonymous or anything, I wasn't that cheese, but, I was in that circle and hacking and stuff and involved in that, I guess, underground culture. And once I learned, which is funny that I just never looked it up before that like you can do that legally within like 3 years, I was at a job with it. I immediately went back to school. And like by the time I got a 2-year degree, I was already, hired to do this. So like, yeah, once I knew this was a thing that I could do legally, I was down. Until then, I was like, I don't know. This is just a really fun passion. I just really love to do this stuff. Would I suggest it? If you are a hacker at your core, it'll come through. Sometimes, you have to look at things and, frame things in a different way, kind of like you want to find value in all the stuff you do, right? Where that yin yang relationship is, like where deving something is applicable to hacking it, right? But if you look back and like, so, I mean, I guess now since this is kind of relevant, I put my first website on when I was 11 for a Halo PC clan I was running, right? Is that hacking? No, but that is relevant, right? And so if you look back at it and you have these, you started coding when you were a kid or you were modding video games, that's a super common way people get in, right? So that's okay. You can do that. You can do that route. I think that if you're going to go the route that I am, you need to like, I don't know, not network, but like just be involved in more hacker culture and like, look for places to apply. You're not going to get, you're not going to get past HR at like a bank, right? Without a 4-year degree. I mean, I have one now, but you will definitely get an interview, right? If you find, a firm with 30 people, right? In wherever, right? A remote job. And that's still, that pays better probably than the bank anyway. But, so like, there's more uphill to, I feel like, get a foot in the door especially if you're not, you're not at the place where you can just take like 50K for 2 years or something, you know what I mean? Just to like be taken advantage of and pay your dues kind of. But it doesn't mean it's not possible anymore, right? Definitely still is. And like, it's definitely a viable path. Would I suggest that you do that? If you don't know, like I had already messed with, I started with Backtrack 2, I want to say. And then like a few weeks later, I think Backtrack 3, like that's
3, yeah.
Right. So like, that's when I, and I had a backup computer in my family room and I had a tower eventually, right? Like, so I had all these things. I was already rooting my phone, like I had all these things that, were all just like layered up, and that's all things that I can use in an offensive engagement, right? So like, if you already have this, and now it's even more fleshed out, like you could just be a straight up, like, I guess, a hacker, right, as a kid now, because like that's a defined thing or well-defined thing. But if that's kind of what your background is, like, then don't hesitate to just apply. You know what I mean? All of the giants of this industry were, as well as I, a high school dropout. So that's just the culture. That's just how it is. It's just becoming less and less prevalent because pentesting is, getting a more and more bespoke suit as time goes by, right?
Mm-hmm. And I want to sprinkle something like that on top of that, and I want to ask a question. Like, as you obviously you never worked with before, right? Like, you rooted phones, you did all that stuff. You had your Mac, you do an Backtrack R3, blah blah blah. So did you work with, for an example, when you got into Active Directory, or you have to, hack SSCM or SCOM, or System Configuration Manager, and all these other things like Exchange or whatever, like the Microsoft world? Did you have a harder time in that space because you were never like a sysadmin or a network admin touching the Microsoft ecosystem? Or is it like, okay, like, I'm asking because people ask, oh, like now you could be a web app, you can be an application pen tester, blah, blah, blah. But there's two parts, right? Like, there's a lot of web app people that, or you go into a firm, it's like, oh, I want you as a pen tester, but you have to know fucking every single thing to pen test, right? You have to pen test from soup to nuts. And it's like, okay, like I only touched the soup, I never touched the nuts, or vice versa. It's like, did you find it like more difficult, or how would someone get that well-rounded experience if they just like, okay, or do you recommend like, okay, I want to be a pen tester, right? Like, it's like a doctor, right? What do you want to practice? So do you find like not touching the AD aspect, like you had I don't want to say trouble, but like, did you have like a harder time to like get around the Microsoft ecosystem since you were like playing around with other aspects?
Yeah, so I would say my entire career has been being pushed into the deep end and treading water and not drowning.
Love it.
I don't always recommend that. And
Yeah.
also, it's more stress on top of the stress and like burnout rate of a security consultant or security engineer, right? If you're internal, like doing pen testing, right? Whatever job does pen testing. So that's the approach. So like, my first like internal, right? I had to spend a shit ton of fucking time. That's it, a ton of time outside, more than a 9 to 5. And then also, lean on like my boss or my coworker,
Yep.
right? A little bit. But actually like care and learn. I didn't have zero experience with like AD, but not like in a real large environment, right? And then you also like, at least at the time, although there are things to like spider out a bit, internal blue was a thing pretty
Mhm.
soon after I started, the PS exec was already a thing, like there was already like these big stepping stones and giants, and like, the whole LM, NTLM, and net NTLM, like all that ecosystem is just like permanently screwed because Microsoft refuses to accept that it's a problem. So
Yeah.
like, sure, you know what I mean? There is definitely an aspects to it. And then, yeah, it just like kind of spiders, right? Then you enumerate services and so on and so forth. So if you're willing to spend the time, doesn't mean you always have to do that. Like I don't have to do that all the time anymore, right? But that is really how you're going to get exposure. Is just like, oh, you run into this service or you run into this thing, and I mean, buying used devices like, on eBay is another way to do that, right? Buy a weird medical laptop thing for $50, you know what I mean, and boot it up, right? I don't know, just poke around. Be aware of what you're using, you know what I mean? When you go to like make an appointment, like what is the framework of the platform they use for that kind of stuff. But yeah, my whole career has been that. I will say that it's very rare nowadays, at least, to find people who are a jack of all trades. Most people choose to be an expert in one thing, whereas my knowledge is like not that deep in anything. Like, sure, I guess I would consider myself an expert in a lot of things, but like not to the point of like, I have some people that I've worked with that are just like eons beyond, where I am, right? And I will never be there because like, to me, I'm not like that attracted by purely web app, right, or purely mobile or purely thick client. Like I'm not. So that has been detrimental in a lot of senses, because if you go that route, you want to become a technical person in a company that those tend to pay more at being an individual contributor to a point quicker, really, right? Right, but you need more specialized knowledge, and that also limits you, right? You don't know what you don't know. So how to like build that is just kind of, go with it, go with the flow. And it's also something that I tell my team, when they're like, well, how do you have the motivation to do stuff after work? I'm like, well, because I want to do it, you know what I mean? Like I love hacking whatever mobile app or whatever I have for that week or a few weeks, right, at my day job. But like, the Flux stuff, like that is out of passion and out of joy, right? So like that's just way funner, and you'll learn way more, if that makes sense. And taking really good notes, right? Refreshing is easier to learn, but I have good notes. I have a com file of thousands and thousands of lines now from started 10 years ago of just commands and what they do that I've ran over the years, and yeah. So I don't know. That's kind of, if that helps or answers, but I think that's good.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I think that's really good. And I guess I asked that because it's like I get asked a question because I'm the total opposite of you, right? Like web app is not my strong suit. That's never been my strong suit. And yeah, I can tinker around with it. I can get through it. I have resources that I can call, I can text, I can email, whatever, saying, hey, I have a question on this, that, and the other. But like, I like to hear those things like, a jack of all trades, a master of none. Because I always felt like that, even before I got into cyber, right? Like, I felt like, yeah, I knew a lot about Cisco and Microsoft and VMware, whatever. But like, I never felt like I was an expert. I just felt like I knew enough to do my job. And, at night, like, yeah, if I'm studying for something, like, I guess I want to touch on the certification and just sprinkle some stuff on that. Because I've gotten, I think I got it the other day, and I don't really think I answered it uh, very clearly or like to the knowledge I wanted, because I just came on the other day just to test this out. Like, someone asked me, I think it was like a 2-part question, like how did you start studying for, or how did you study for certifications, and like why did I get so many? I've gotten that question a lot over the years, and I think I've answered this many, many times, but I know there's probably new people that view my stuff or maybe hear this, not something else. It's a very simple thing for me. Like in my 20s, like when I was coming up in the game, like it's like going to college, right? You did your 4-year degree. You studied for 4 years. You did assignments. You did your whatever. It's like, okay, I'm gonna get my 4-year degree. Like I did put my time in. So for an example, like when I was learning Cisco, if I'm gonna, install switches, install routers, ASAs, whatever the case may be, configure these things, set all this stuff up. If I'm learning it, why not do CCNA, CCNP, whatever the certification is for the technology that you're learning? For me, that was more of a satisfaction for myself. It's like going to law school, not taking a bar exam. That's the way I was thinking about like all those certifications that I've taken. And, like right now, I was getting, I was like debating on putting my Microsoft certifications that I've been taking lately on like LinkedIn and putting it out there, because people are like, oh, you work with Microsoft. I like to keep some stuff like you to myself, private, a little more, under the radar. And
yeah, but I will say, and I don't think I heard you or anyone talk about this. They say, the longer you wait to go back to school, the harder it is. The more you do the job that you are studying for, the harder it is,
Yeah.
So I did the final 2 years of my 4-year when I transferred in 1 year, right? But I already had the job that they advertise you can get from getting the degree. I already have the job or am doing internal pen tests. So why would I go and get the OSCP and like care, right? Now there's still plenty to learn from the labs. It's still fun. The book is still great to have and study, but like I don't need the paper. I'm already doing it. There is some downside to that, right? But that I think is something that no one really talks about, that like it's hard to care, right? It's hard to like and then you also learn, like the CISSP advertises, it's really just for people to talk the same language. It's not even about what you know, right? It's just so that you use the same terminology. But like, I'm already doing this, so why would I need to go get this paper? But in reality, some places need it. Some people, like government, cares about that stuff, right? Government contracts and stuff, right? Some places care.
Yeah.
But so that was, for me, was the hardest thing. Was like, again, similar to job interviews. Like I already hacked for your company. Why am I? Why is there pressure on me to like have a real job interview? I'm already doing this job. Like, you're already paying me or paying the company I work for to do this job.
So are you saying like internally move up? Like, is that what you're referring to right now? Like, you're like, for an example, you're an associate and you want to become a principal or a senior. Like, why are you interviewing me again? You already know my skill. Is that what you're referring to?
No, I mean, like if I go to, let's say, apply to a client of the company I work at, right? I can't like tell the interviewer that I already do work for you, right?
Gotcha.
But they're still going to act like, I don't know, I know nothing about it, or they're going to, whatever, not offer me a job when I'm already doing the job. And you run into that a lot. But that's I think a personal thing, right? Some people, because it's like a piece of paper that proves that you know what you're doing, right? Sure. And also because everything's under NDAs, right? Like, you can't just like, I can't just like publish which is also why security research is fun. But like, I can't just like publish my cool finding I found, you know what I mean, against, one of these Fortune 10 companies, you know what I mean? So there's definitely like pluses and benefits. Just to me, like if like for example, if you're going for the money, you're going to go for the IAM stuff, right? You're going to go for the cloud stuff. Like then don't try to get the job so you have the cert.
Yeah.
Right. If you otherwise, it's just a way for you to ask for more money, right? Or a way for you to go somewhere else to get more money, right? But like if you already have the job, like I would argue often there's not a point to at least going through the whole process and like putting that pressure on yourself. If you want to switch roles, definitely useful. If you want to move from help desk to something else, definitely useful, right? But if you're already doing it, like it's going to be a lot harder. So just keep that in mind, in my opinion, like before you
start investing,
you end up
investing time, money, and all that stuff. Yeah, I totally agree, because it's like recently, like I did a FedRAMP. I'm not going to discuss too much about that, but at least live. But because I signed some stuff too, so like there was a situation where when my CEH came clutch, right? Because if I didn't have the CEH, I can, I have all these other certifications, CPTS, CVBH, PMPT, PJPT, and all these other pen testing certifications, but they didn't give a shit about them because, FedRAMP wants your Security Plus, CISSP, or CEH, right? And if I didn't, and to be quite honest, like my CEH, my CHFI, ECSA, and LPT, I do pay $80 a year to EC Console to keep those things going, because obviously
that's even less necessary. I've never heard of them actually caring if it's even valid anymore.
Oh no, if it's government, yeah, because they run that, and you have to show that it's a valid cert.
My bosses have gone around that, but maybe it's been because it's a company. I don't know, but whatever.
Yeah, maybe for you, like if you have CEH people that's in the company that keep it valid, it's like if you're a CCIE, right? If you have a CCIE on staff, you can get the Cisco things, and not everyone has to be a CCIE, only one guy, and you get all the bells and whistles from Cisco, right?
But, so maybe how much you can charge is also tied to that, at least in New York.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm also past that point now. I think with 10 years experience, like it doesn't matter anymore. But before that, there was definitely like, you get pushback if you're like, well, no, this person's actually like knows what they're talking about.
Exactly.
Without a cert. So.
Yeah. So have you messed with any FedRAMP stuff yourself? No.
Not that I can think of. Maybe a long time ago at my first job, but no. I mean, I've of course ran into it and whatever, but like, no, I wouldn't be able to tell you the first thing about that.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's a whole different language, right? Like I literally had to learn it recently for like a side thing that I was doing, and
related to NIST type of things, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, sure. I don't know, because like a FedRAMP assessment like it just means nothing to me. Like what is the actual like? Okay, so I have to check these specific boxes for these specific regulations and follow these specific standards. Like that's it's just a pen test with extra steps. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It is exactly that's exactly what it is. If those folks that don't know what FedRAMP is, that's pretty much what it is. It's a pen test with some extra boxes to check just because of the government.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's cool. And what time is it? Just want to be respectful. All right, so it's 7:20, 7:40. So
you could go a few minutes after. It's okay, but
yeah.
Whatever.
So, is there any questions? I don't even. I have it up on my other one. So
I just see someone talking about some cert that they were going to take 8 years ago. I don't know if that's.
Let's see. Oh, FedEx. Yeah, hit me up about because so like CTFs. Me and I wasn't say FedRAMP. Me and FedEx are going to be creating a cool CTF for B-side, what is it, St. Pete? And so that should be fun. I just saw him in the chat. So, thank you. Appreciate it for I think that's super chat. I don't really know what that is. So welcome to thank you for supporting. I don't know if you became a member or if that's a super chat. This software doesn't really tell me, but anyway, thank you. Saying what's up? I agree. I feel like my experience certification degree shouldn't even matter. Yeah. And there's like big guns in the community, right? Like Ben, right? NomeSec. I don't think he has any certifications or anything like that, and he's like, one of the top bug bounties, right? So it's like, and yeah, so that's so talk about bug bounties. Like, do you do any bug bounties?
Before college, I want to say before college. So actually, I don't know if I've ever talked about this like in a video before, but I was like one of the first people to sign up to Facebook, where like it was still limited by colleges. I just like and like the Ivies at the time. But I got on because I just was like Chong Wong at harvard.edu, and it was a real person, I guess, and it validated, and that was was my first, and they never sent you an email or valid, like, I don't know, but that got me on. And so I don't remember when this was, how many years later, but they did have a bug bounty, right? They were one of the first to do it. And like, I found something and they were like, oh, like, we're out of scope. And I was like, hey, this is dumb. And then my only other, I've spent some time post that, right? Like, just like, looking around and stuff. And like, I think I found some Arma thing for one of their sites that had some HTML injection, but I couldn't figure out how to, leverage that to get XSS or anything. And like, then I don't know, I never reported it. And then outside of that, I've gotten like duplicates a few times, and that's it. So like, not really. I would say I've spent, less hours than I have less hours in 1 week, right, than I have over the course of Bug Bounty. It's just very saturated. It's not really, it's just kind of, it's cool because to me, that's way smarter or way better than a CTF, but that's like, even more of a headache in my opinion. But yeah, that's, I like the research, the security research where it's Bug Bounty, but without a scope.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally.
So you just don't touch their, cloud infrastructure, basically.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you're good.
But I do want to reverse back to what you said, because it just popped back in my head. And I think you said something about like being on an engagement, like a CTF is like, okay, I can be on a CTF and I know there's a golden prize, right? And then like in a real engagement, I don't even know if we touched on this. If we did, sorry. A long day. But like on a real engagement, like, have you been on an engagement for whatever, 30, 40 hours, and it's like nothing, like no findings, nothing. And if so, how do you write up the report for the client when there's absolutely no findings? And like, how do you go about that?
I would say in the 10 years I've been doing this, I've had less than a handful of less than one hand of reports with nothing. I mean, it's just not really possible, to be honest. Maybe you have to think outside the box. Maybe you have to take what I call a holistic approach to it. That's how I approach all of my engagements, right? But like, that's super rare. When that does happen, or when there's even not a lot of stuff, right? The most important thing to do is just to write what you did try and what worked with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I did check for this and this and this, and it was all da-da-da, and then, also managing expectations, because like in the times maybe that has occurred, it's most likely because of a super small scope or something changed or something like that, right? So that's how you kind of write it up. You kind of just at a high level talk about what you did check for or how you checked. But to have nothing is pretty wild, right?
Gotcha. And I want to touch on something about this came to my, you work your day job like myself, and then at night, you do your side stuff, do your own thing. How do you deal with burnout? Like, do you ever like, okay, I'm fucking done for the, like, how do you deal with that? Like right now you can't skate because, you have an injury. That used to be your outlet. You can go skate for a few hours, disconnect from your computer. Like, if you didn't have that, like if you didn't see, like how do you deal with burnout? Like how and like the mental health issue, I feel like that's a huge problem. And
yeah, sure. I mean, that's why it's the number one burnout job, right? People leave. They don't, they're not pen testers for more than a few years on average, right? Because it's a higher burnout rate. But I don't know. I've been burnt out since for probably 9 years. So after the first year I got started in the industry, part of it comes from, hacking's part of me, my identity, right? It's something that I love, but it's also not like selling your passion for $1, right? Like, $20 is $20. And so like when you make your job your passion, like you lose a bit. So you kind of just have to accept it. I don't have a way. I'm still burnt out. It's 10 years later, it is what it is. I think the only thing that I could really do, or that I do, that I can give as advice is like to listen to yourself. And like, when you do have something that's interesting, like, don't be like, oh, well, I already do this all day. Listen when you're like, wow, this sounds sick. I really want to work on this, right? Listen to yourself and do it. And then if you get tired of it or you get bored of it, like, that's okay. But like, don't deny yourself or force yourself either way, right? Because you're going to have to do it. And if you can come up with anything else, you let me know, because, you know, I could take 3 weeks off. I could take 3 months off of work, but I'm still love hacking. I'm still thinking about it all the time. It's still a part of who I am. And in the times that I've switched jobs and I've had it, let's say, a few weeks off, like I'm like, maybe I should, do some gray hat shit or download some shit. Like I need to hack something. You know what I mean? Like I have an itch, right? So that I don't really have good advice. I get this a lot from my team as well. You know, it's really just listening to yourself and, you know, giving yourself the understanding. And like, if you burn hot, you know, for a while, like take a step back. My wife really helps. You know, when she met me, I was working 8 hours a week, and I went to school on an expedited program to get my bachelor's the last 2 years in one. Right. And so she was like, we're not going to be together if that, you know, you're working like literally 100 hours like now. But it's a means to an end, and I did it. And so now I have a bigger separation, right? And so I lean on that as well. But I don't know. You love it, you know. That tism goes off, like, you know, you're not going to get me off of it.
Yeah. And then like the last question, and I have two more topics I would like to talk about. So like, how I like to ask people this because, you know, a lot of us are introverts, right? A lot of us don't like people, or they just like do their own thing or whatever. So how important to you is being involved with the community and contributing to the community? Because I want to put this out there live. Like lately, you know, I'm a little different, right? Like John knows me in the real world. He knows me outside of the internet. I'm a little different in the sense of like, I'm not your typical nerd. I want to say that, right? Like I say that and people give me shit, whatever. So it's like, sometimes I feel like I just want to disconnect, right? Disconnect just because, you know, sometimes I have my sock puppet accounts. If I get kicked out of a Discord server, I have other ways to go in and see who's talking shit. I put it out there. You know what I mean? And I've seen it, and I found out who people are, and you know all this stuff, and it's like you go down this rabbit hole of like, okay, what's next? And I want to keep it at that. Everyone else can put a question mark, but those people that know who I am, it goes to my head. It's like, oh, okay, like how can I just disconnect from that and just not be involved with that? Because the more I get involved, I the more I get involved with that is like I don't want to be, you know, involved with some I guess communities because it irks me because I don't know. Do you ever feel like that? I don't know if
I'm not famous enough that people care. I like to tell myself that, my ego would say I would love to be famous enough that people like talk shit about me. That'd be sick. I don't know if that's going to happen at this point. And in regards to like community contributions, I am. It's hard because coming from hacker culture, like information should be free, right? And like hack the planet, like literally. And I want to publish my research and like even responsible disclosure, like that is, hey, like I'm doing this out of the kindness of my heart, you know what I mean? And so that like you don't try to like call the FBI me on something dumb, you know what I mean? That's not illegal, right? It's not like a actual requirement, right? I mean, it's what's called ethical or responsible like disclosure. Like it's not it's a moral thing, right? It's your own ethic thing. So like that's, I don't know, definitely